Today we're going to look at Vico's theory on mental life. And what he proposes, he was an 18th century philosopher, and he proposed that there are four stages that people go through when they're interacting with institutions of life. So we're just going to look at that a little bit. I'm going to talk about it, and then you'll also have an article to read as well. So the overview is this, that a person's interaction with this institution it becomes incredibly important. And so he or she works through these four stages, and it doesn't, none of them are uniform. None are considered better or worse than necessarily than another. But a person might feel a little bit more comfortable in one stage than another. Uh, a lot of times what will happen is that you could be in varying stages with different institutions in your life. So if you just discovered you love to play the ukulele, you might be in stage one with ukulele playing, but you've been playing piano for 8 years, and you might be in stage three for that. So there's varying places that people will be in regard to each of the institutions that are in their life. But the four stages that we're going to look at, and Vico talks about how these are recursive. So you typically will always start with stage one and go through, but you may or may not get to stage four, or you might go to stage four and you might spend just a little bit of the time there and come back or start over in a different institution. So he says that typically, unless somebody gets to a place in all institutions of their life where they're all in stage four irony in the malignant nihilist stage, really there's variety and different impacts that each of these stages can have on your life. So the four stages in overview are: stage one is metaphor. It's that falling in love. It's trying to get people to understand all the emotions and all of the feelings and all of the excitement that you have about this particular thing that you are interested in. Stage two is metonymy, and it's finding the parts. So once you fall in love, eventually you have to find the words. So at first, it's just the feelings and it's the emotions, and then it's the research. Instead of just what it is and what it makes me feel, now it's how does it work? And why does it make me feel the way that it does? What's the inner working part? And then stage three is synecdoche, which is a being. It's a part for the whole for the part. So it's a full holistic understanding of who you are in relation to that institution. So it's kind of becoming part of that institution. And stage four is irony, which is a level of uncertainty. And there's two stages within irony. One is it's stage four clearly, but one is called liberal, and that's the benign version of stage four. And then there is nihilist, and that is the malignant version of stage four. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So stage one is metaphor, falling in love. Things are exciting. When a person kind of falls into this and they first discover something, they're finding the words, they're trying to connect. They sometimes will isolate themselves because all they want to do is whatever it is that they're doing. One of the things that I connect this to is my son. When he first started watching Doctor Who, he adored it, and I couldn't find him for like 2 hours or so, and it was because he was gone and just absorbed in watching these shows. The example that I'm going to talk about throughout this is snowboarding and my relationship with that institution. I first started when I was 18, and that's actually pretty late in the mid-90s and in Oregon. I was actually on skis, and I had just bought my first ski package, and I was convinced by my friends to go snowboarding, and I fell in love. Welcome to metaphor. I couldn't get enough. I went home, I sold my package of ski stuff, bought my snowboarding package, and went up to the hill every weekend. We were up there. I just couldn't get enough. And I didn't care I was falling, and I didn't care if I was awful, because I loved every moment of it. And every time I fell, I was learning something new, and it was super awesome. And when I would go home, I was just jazzed and energized and trying to explain it to my parents, who were not snow people at all. and I just didn't have the words for it. And that was great and awesome until I started to move into metonymy. So stage 2 is where we substitute the name of an attribute, um, trying to get closer. So this is where synonyms start to come in, and we can substitute a name for the thing that's meant. So like the example says, we might say a suit for a business executive, or the track for the whole idea of horse racing. This is where people are searching. They're searching for understanding, searching for the reasons, and they're starting to put together pieces. And this is studying. So now, instead of just being in love and all the emotion isn't enough. Now I needed the reason behind snowboarding. And how that happened is that I was riding one of my favorite runs that was a blue run, because if you know anything about snowboarding, green runs are not good for snowboarders. And I was going down this blue run, and a couple of punk kids, probably like 12 or 13, yelled at me from the chairlift. I can't even tell you what they said. I mean, because it's inappropriate. And all of a sudden, love wasn't enough. I couldn't just love this sport. I wanted to be good at it. And so I started studying. I started watching videos. I started taking tips from my friends. I started following my friends through the trees and off jumps and into parks and everything. It was all about watching people and watching what they did and trying to emulate them, and just trying to kind of piece out what it was. And so I would go with my one friend who was really a big trickster and liked to ride rails and do half pipes, and I would go with him and I would try to figure it out. I go with my other friend who just really loved to do tree runs, and she was really good at like side jumps, just off of little lips here and there. And so I would go with her and I would try that out. And I'd go with my other friend who just loved speed and just would like barrel down the mountain. And I was trying everything out to kind of make sense of this snowboarding institution and where my place in it was. And from that stage, then it goes into stage 3, which is synecdoche. And this is, a part for the whole or whole for the part. So I might say nice wheels to mean somebody's car, or Cleveland 1x6 runs, and we know that Cleveland stands for baseball, like the Italian baseball team. And so with synecdoche, that there's wisdom. I'm not just searching for a word or a synonym like I was in stage 2. Now I say with confidence that I know what that whole is or that part is. This is wisdom. So it moves from studying other to studying self. And now in stage 3, this is where people become interested in the essence and how this institution is connected to the self. So this, in a certain degree, the institution becomes part of the person here. So as a snowboarder, this is when I started to come out of studying and becoming my own boarder. And so I started to go on my own runs and kind of figure out what I wanted to do and what I liked to do. And I could do I could do tricks. I could pull tricks. I could go down blacks. I could go down greens. I could go down, black diamonds. I could do all of these runs. But what I found is that I really like to go fast. Like I liked a couple speed runs where it was just about getting down the mountain as fast as possible, hitting edges, holding them, no matter if there was ice or if my board was starting to chatter, I could ride through that. And so snowboarding within stage 3 was my essence. Like I knew who I was as a snowboarder. And I'm not going to lie, I'm sure I went down that blue underneath the chairlift looking for those punk kids so they could see that I was my own snowboarder. And from stage 3, there's stage 4. Now, stage 3 is a necessary progression to go into stage 4. Stage 4 is liberalism and disillusionment. The literature term that goes through this is irony, because the irony is what is versus what seems to be. And that's what irony is. And so there's always this uncertainty as to whether we're reading the what is correctly or not. Um, One of the examples in the reading, they talk about a professor saying, well, that's interesting. And that vagueness tells us that, we're not sure if the professor really thinks it's interesting or if that's interesting in a kind of shady way. Like, yeah, that's interesting, but I don't really want to hear any more about that. Or if it's genuinely interesting. So, um, to enter into stage 4, something changes. Something changes that familiarity and that wisdom that we felt in stage 4, or I mean in stage 3. So it might be circumstances, it might be knowledge, it could be the sense of uncertainty. And depending on the size of the discomfort, it kind of determines whether or not you're going to go into liberal, which is the benign, or nihilist, which is the malignant. When we start to think about the malignant, Vico talks about how the malignant is where civilizations destruct, like they deconstruct, they die out, because there is no life when you're brooding or sarcastic or have the inability to see good in what used to be, or if you're so steeped in cynicism that blackness actually starts to creep out and into the other institutions that you're in relationship with. And so nihilist is hard, it's rough, and to get out of. It's not to say that you can't, but it's just really hard to move out of that stage because of how encompassing that cynicism and that brooding can be. Um, the less uh, malignant is the liberal, and think about liberal as like letting things go, almost like outgrowing certain things. So you can let go of thinking or actions that no longer serve the same purpose. It's a natural fruition. Like you come to this place and you're like, oh, okay, well, you know what? That just kind of doesn't work for me anymore. So within snowboarding, what that happened is that circumstances. I didn't board as much as I used to because we lived in Texas, and the nearest mountain was in New Mexico, at least 4 hours away. And then after that, we moved, but then we had kids, and in fact, the last time I was on a board was up here at Frontenac when Frontenac was open, and I was 12 weeks pregnant with Drew. So that's how long, and he's now 11. So you can see how long it's been since I've been on my board. I think I did take it down. I did ride my board down the sledding hill, the Judd at Judd Park. That was fun. But that's it. Like that's the last time I've been on my board, and I miss it, but I'm not cynical about it. I'm liberal. And in fact, it was kind of a slow process coming out of it. We used to go every single weekend, and then just by natural life happening, I would get up maybe once or twice a month, and then it turned into maybe once every couple months, and then once every 6 months, or rarely. And I appreciate it, and I can't wait to take the boys up. But that is almost a new institution, because it's no longer me boarding, it's me teaching my kids or introducing my kids to boarding. And so that is one of the ways that Vico says that we can kind of recursive our way out. That we can go backward and revisit these stages, or we can kind of jump to the front with a new institution. But he talks a lot about how to recursive out within like snowboarding, that takes time, and I can't necessarily skip stages. I mean, I might slip back through stage 3 and reevaluate where my wisdom was in order to figure out what I need to relearn or what new information I need to learn in stage 2. So he talks about how it's kind of like a chain link. It's not just a straight line, it's not just linear, but it's also not necessarily circular, meaning like stage 4 automatically goes to stage 1. There's nuances in there. But that's kind of an overview for Vico, and you'll learn more as you read about it. But this is a really great way to kind of look through humanity, uh, to see where people are working from, if people are in different stages. Because you can imagine what a stage for nihilist could do to a stage one metaphor. And it just through words and actions within the same institution. So that's just a overview of what Vico is about. And I look forward to talking to you about this in class.